Guru team, welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator 24 tips and tricks with me, your host Long John Silver. Here we are on the Pilatus PC-12 NGX again. Here you go. It's a funky little paint job there, and we're having a look at the Honeywell Apex Prime, in particular this time for ILS approaches. So first off, what is an ILS approach, and why does it differ to, for example, an RNAV approach, or even an LOC, which is a locator approach? The RNAV approach, as I'm sure you know by now, if you've watched any of my other series on autopilots, etc., is done by the GPS. So there's a GPS unit on the plane, and it communicates with satellites and determines where in the world your plane is and at what altitude it is flying, and it knows because the ground station also has a GPS where in the world the ground station is, and the computers calculate the difference between the two, and it gives you a rough indication of how to get down on the ground. The ILS differs because it requires a beacon at the airport. So the beacon at the airport transmits a beacon on a frequency which is in a lateral and vertical path, usually maximum spread of 30 degrees lateral vertical and lateral and vertical from the actual unit itself, which is situated somewhere on the airport, and it calculates exactly where you are. There's no guesswork. It knows exactly where you are because it's taking feedback from the beacon bouncing off your plane, and that lets you guide your plane into the runway. The ILS approach in the real world is considered the precision approach. There may be differences between the ILS and the LOC approach in the real world. I've not really found a massively huge difference in game, so I haven't done them separately. If you can do an ILS, you can do an LOC. If you can do an LOC, you can do an ILS. They're pretty much of a muchness from my perspective. There's always a little bit of tweaking and fiddling about, but the principles are more or less exactly the same. RNAV is slightly different. VOR has a lot of similarities to the ILS and LOC, but the VOR is a much more passive system. It's basically just helping you guide your plane to the runway. It's not doing anything active in terms of guiding your plane to the runway. Anyway, so here we are, and we're in the Honeywell Apex Prime. We're at cruise altitude, and we're bombing along, to wherever we are bombing along to. So the first thing we want to check when we're here is we want to check our flight bag. Now, you want to make sure your flight bag can do an ILS approach. Not all runways can. And we also want to make sure of a couple of other bits and pieces. So we've had our cruise set. Now, I did say before, if you have this open and it has things like transition or 485 feet or 255 or 735 or anything like that, that isn't going to work. You will get a note here on your flight plan in the plane that there's a text box which says you need to navigate your own way to a certain point, and then it will pick up the nav from there. You can try that. You can use the direct to button down here to get in the air. You can direct to it, or you can simply avoid all that by changing the particular pattern. So mine was initially set pardon me, was initially set to Bravo Tango Victor 1, and that was giving me an issue, so I just set it to VFR pattern straight auto, which took us out, and then we reached there, and then we do a left, and then we're on our way, and it was just an awful lot easier to do that. I would advise doing that, especially for the first few times you're doing this in the Honeywell. The Honeywell Apex Prime system is fiddly, tricky, and prone to dropping in and dropping out and doing a whole bunch of other things. So just be aware, always double and triple check this unit because it is problematic. So we have our altitude set, we have our en route waypoints set, we've got a long ways to go, which is fine. We're not worried about an arrival procedure, we're not really big enough, it doesn't really matter to us. That's the kind of thing where you go to a long out place, there might be a holding, etc, etc. We're going to come in ILS via direct, and that's going to bring us in at Mumbai. And you can see here from this line, we must be higher than 2500 at Mumbai, and we must be higher than 2500 at Gailey. So this is probably our initial fix, this is probably our final fix. As you can see, this is 48.3 nautical miles, and then we've got 9.2 from Gailey, and then from Gailey to runway 32 is 4.3. So we've got a bit of a descent to do, and I want to talk about that in a minute. So then here we are down at our runway. What do we need? Well, we go to our runway and we see where we want to do. Runway 32 is recommended. We are coming in on runway 32, which is fine. So if we then go to our charts and we go have a look at our approach charts, we go have a look at 32, you'll probably need to switch this to FAA to get your approach chart. You'll see we have ILS or LOC, runway 32. You usually find that, but you can, for example, here, this has only got LOC on runway 14, and then you've got all of your RNAVs, and then you've got a VOR on runway 25 as well. So we want the ILS, and we want to have a look at the ILS approach chart. Now there's a couple of things we first want to know about our ILS chart, and they're all slightly different, which is a little bit weird, but anyway, what we want to do is if we zoom in just a little bit, you can see up here at the top it tells you that the localizer that we want is at 110.3. That's the frequency. It also shows you here that the localizer is at 110.3. So just so you know, and then it gives you the Morse code. It also gives you its name, which is India Charlie Mike X-ray in this case, and the DME refers to distant measuring equipment. It says the DME is required for procedure entry, etc, 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 which is fine. So we have all of that. We'll zoom out a little bit so we can have a little bit more of a look at the chart. What this is then saying is we have this ILS beacon, and you can see it's got this window, this diverging window. This is the lateral. You need to be in here to pick up the ILS. If you're too far, whatever that is, north, or you're too far south in this case, you're going to miss that beacon, and you want to make sure you get that beacon, and that's at 313 degrees center. So the beacon's broadcasting at 313 degrees center. There's a little bit of a variation, but you want to make sure you're going to be picking it up, and this brackets here is the distance in 9.3, which is the distance from the runway, and it says you want to be at 2,500 feet on a bearing of 313 in this corridor at 9.3 to pick up the ILS beacon, and that will help guide you in. And if you have a look here, this is also what it shows you. It shows you here a particular approach. This is coming in from Gailey, and then there's a Gailey, you're going out, and then you're turning and coming back in again. We're going to come in direct, so I think we should be fine. We should be coming in from this side anyway. So we need to be at 2800 out here. Doesn't give us a specific distance out here. There we go. Mumbai 14.8. So that's 14.8. So we want to be at 2800 at 14.8. And then you'll see here that there's an actual descent, and at Gailey we want to be at 2494, call it 2500, which is what this calls it. So we want to be at 2500 by the time we get to this point. So that is the point that we need to be at when we get there. What I would do now is I would come over here and set this. So this is our altitude. We're already at cruise, so I don't need to do anything else, but we're going to dial that all the way down. And that's the big numbers, and this is the small numbers. So we're going to set that at 25. We're going to pop the VNAV on. We're going to have a look at that in a minute. So we've set that. We know what we're doing. Also, what we want to do then is say, what is the MDA, which is the minimum minimum decision altitude, which is here, and this is at 0.8 from the runway, and that is telling us that that is going to be, for an ILS approach, 1270. So it's quite a high elevation. So 1270 is our decision. Now, I can't see the barrow from here on that screen, and I can't quite slew across. So what we'll do is we'll slew across here so we can see it. I'll open that up again, and we want to set the barrow at 1270. Now, unfortunately, in this, it doesn't actually show me on the dial, but it does on the screen. So you can see there on the autopilot screen, it's going up. It goes up in big chunks, so sometimes you have to be careful. It depends on how much. So we're at 1 and we want it to be 1270. There you go. So our barrow is set. I'd love to be able to adjust my barrow to the actual atmospheric, but I can't, because I haven't in this plane anywhere found how you change the barrow from inches to hectopascals, which is what mine is in. So anyway, so there you go. So that is that. So we have all that, and then there is one thing that we have to do, which is we have to set this frequency to 110.3. So to set that, we need to have a look over here at our navs. So you can see we have nav 1 here, which I'll just reset that button. So this is nav 1. Right, so nav 1 here, which is LOC1 over here, which is I've picked with my nav preview, is set at 110.5. Now, in this case, the white is the active and the cyan is the standby. So this is at 110.5 and we want it to be 110.3. How do we change that? Because we can't select on this and we can't select there. So we come down here and you'll see we've got nav, and we're on nav 1. So what we can do is we can actually set this one, and we can say we'll set this one for 110.3, and then we can say we're going to enter that, and then we can swap it and close it. And if we come up here, you'll see that the white one, which has now got an acronym next to it, India Romeo Papa, is 110.3. Now, 110.3 is not what we want, but the reason it's picking that up is because we're somewhere near a localizer that has that frequency and it has that acronym for it. So that's fine. We don't need to worry about that. We're a long way away from our destination yet and just mooching along. So we don't need to worry about that. So that's us pretty much set for now before we reach any kind of a decision point in terms of how we get down to the runway and how we make a descent. Now then, I just want to talk about this flight plan. So when you put the flight plan together, you will sometimes find there is a discontinuity in here. And I've said before, it seems to be a little bit tricky to delete, and it does. What I have found, I will tell you though, what I have found is if you have a discontinuity, if you cycle it up near the top and click on it, this drop down will give you an option to delete it, and then you can delete it. If you delete it, you get a top of descent that comes in. If you don't delete it, you don't get a top of descent, and therefore your VNAV will not fire even if you select it, even if it says VNAV here. If there's a discontinuity in your flight plan, it absolutely will not fire. If you get the top of descent, it will fire. Now, here's one of the issues I have though. So that is showing us a top of descent between Sinrod and Mumsby, I think. So let's go back to our flight bag and have a look. So Mumby is there. Oh, it's Stunnard. So between Stunnard and Mumby, we need to get to 2500. And we know really it's Gailey is where we want to be at 2500. Now, I would say to you, be very careful with the VNAV on this plane, because I have had it fail to reach my target altitude in time. So while it sets a TOD there, and while it recognizes that it's supposed to be at 2500, the autopilot is supposed to calculate the rate of descent and the distance from Mumbai to determine how it can get to 2500 at Mumbai. I have found that that does not always work in this plane, so I would caution you to be very careful on relying on the VNAV. A lot of other planes, the Garmins, etc., the VNAV works fine, and you'll get there when you get there, and it'll be just fine. But for this, for the Honeywell Apex Prime, take it with a very significant pinch of salt, would be my advice. If we come down here, we can have a look at our approach. We can see that our approach here is ILS 32, which is fine. If we have a look, you can see we're set on runway 32. Our approach is an ILS 32. We're not going through any of the other places that we're going. We don't have a star trans or anything like that, so we don't need to worry. We can close that. So we do have an approach set. You don't, in the Honeywell, have to go through another menu somewhere where you set up approaches or anything else. If it is correct in your electronic flight bag, it will be correct here. You don't need to reselect it. Just leave it alone. Just check that it's accurate would be my advice. And then obviously what we want to do is we want to wait until we get to Stunnard. We descend, we get to Mumbai. When we see the LOC fire with the right heading and the right acronym, we know that we are on the right path. Just want to change my HSI to look like that. And also what I want to do is I just want to set my heading to 313. I do this just because I find it very helpful to have the bug set. So that puts the bug here which says this is a 313. So when I see my localizer come in, if it pops in and it isn't on that heading, there's something wrong with my localizer, and I will not pay attention to it. I will take a look at what's going on. I will assess if there's any issues or any dramas or anything else that's happening. So that's it. When you're on route, when you're on flight, just make sure, check everything, set everything as I have done. We're already on course, so we've got plenty of time. Set everything here. I would keep the throttle on manual for now. I think I'm going to do another video on the automatic throttle in the Pilatus, but for now, let's just leave everything on manual so we don't complicate anything. We don't need to worry about anything else because the VNAV is already set. Just one other thing, thank you to one of my viewers who identified the synthetic terrain button is here. So you can come over here and you can switch the synthetic terrain on and off, which is nice. I do like that. Even though the bezel button next to this says NA, it does the same function. So thank you very much for my very savvy viewers for pointing that out. You can do it. It can be done. I like it, personally speaking. Like I've said, very helpful when you're actually on the ground taxiing because you can follow the yellow lines of the taxiways. It's not always easy to look out the windows of these things. And otherwise, we're all set. As I have said to you before, a bit disappointing about the speed. I don't know exactly what the issue with this is. The cruise speed of this plane is supposed to be nearly 300 knots, but you can't get it above 180 or alarm bells will sound. I don't know what the story with that is exactly. If anyone does, feel free to drop into chat, what exactly is going on, or if I'm missing something. I don't think I am. I think it might be a mistake in how the tape is reading speed. I still think we're bombing along pretty quickly, but I'm not really sure. Anyway, I'm going to carry on to the top of the descent, and we'll see how we go from there, and I'll bring you in when we're on our descent path. I'll see you soon. Okay, welcome back. Well, here we are. We are approaching STNRD. You can see that the top of descent is approaching quickly, so I'm going to keep an eye on it. I also want to keep an eye on my speed because the minute we hit that, we are going to transition downwards, which is going to increase my speed. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I've been traveling with the sim rate elevated, so I'm going to turn this sim rate down a little bit, and I want to make sure that my PSI torque is really sort of around about 17-ish. It changes a little bit, the torque on this plane, as you descend. So I'll speed this up a little bit till I get us to the top of the descent, and then we'll watch to make sure that it's descending. We get a little bit of that rocking horse stuff, but here we go. So we've transitioned. So you can see there that it recognizes that we are on a vertical path, which is fine. Now it's telling me, just ignore air traffic control. It's telling me I've got 28.2 nautical miles till I get to Mumbai, and then from Mumbai to Galley is 48.3. So like I said, gotta be real careful, gotta watch this. So I'm gonna watch this like a hawk and see if it gets me there. If I find myself, let's have a look at my approach. If I find myself not at 2500 or not even approaching 2500 by the time I'm away from Galley. Now, as I've said here, this distance marker out here, I think at Mumbai, this is 14.8 from the DME, but you'll see here that ICMX is 15.8 is, sorry, 2. Sorry, I need to answer this call. Radios. So you'll see that this is 2. So, and that's 1.2. So there's 1.2. So 1.2 from 14.8 is 13.6. So 13.6, and that is 5.5. That's 8.1. So we've got 8.1 to get there. If I'm 8.1 nautical miles away from Galley and we aren't at 2500, I'm going to be taking care of it myself. So we can see how we're going. You can see here we can go a little bit faster. So what I'll do is I'll up the speed. I'm not sure that really significantly changes our descent, but we can go a little bit quicker, and I'm going to keep a very close eye on this, and I'll bring you in when we get to Galley, and then we'll talk about approaches. I'll see you soon. I had to very definitely do that myself, and we're going to hit approach mode now. We are at 24.8. We are 4.9 away from Galley. So I had to do quite a serious descent to get that down, that last view. And like I said, I have found that the situation with this is that it is awfully squirrely with the VNAV, and it doesn't necessarily calculate the VNAV correctly. If we have a look over here at the vertical profile, you can see here now we are going to intersect Galley at the right height. We are below the glide path here. So what is going to happen is I have switched. No, approach mode isn't on because we haven't caught the beacon. I haven't switched the beacon source. So Loc 1, hit approach. We're 3.1 from Galley. We're going a little bit slow. So let's get some speed in there. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, plane. So that was from when I came down. I was dropping speed quite a bit. A lot of things to remember sometimes. Also, when you're doing a tutorial vid, there's a lot of things to remember as well. So we've lost a little bit of altitude. That's fine. We'll pick up a little bit. We don't want to be too low, because then we'll end up being not in the right position either. So we're climbing back to the right altitude. The autopilot will take us back to the right altitude. We'll just give it a little bit more juice to get there. We're still 1.6 away from Galley, so that's fine. There you go, we're at 2500, so we can peel back to just around about the white mark. The LOC is in there. We can see here that we have got the beacon ICMX Loc 1 313 on bearing 6.2 nautical miles, which is just absolutely great. So we're coming in. All I want to know is we're on the glide slope. So now we've come in on the glide slope. That has been beeping at us, so we can now drop the gears, which is great. We're getting a whole bunch of other warning sounds for some strange reason. So there you go. Might be because no, I do have the sim rate at the regular speed. So from here we are on glide slope. So what I want to do is I want to extend the gears. So drop the gears. I'm also going to hit first stage flaps. So that takes us to 15 degrees. And now all I need to do from here really is manage the approach. So I like getting to roughly sort of this position here, which is kind of good. So this is more or less straight with the nose. The ILS is bringing us in on a perfectly oriented glide slope. So all I need to do is bring the speed down. So I need to drop the speed because I'm going just a little bit too fast. But that's okay. Round about 100 at this stage is okay for me. We don't want to go too slow, so we're going to manage that. We are still a couple of nautical miles away, 1.6 nautical miles away, 1.5. I generally tend to wait until I'm around about 1 nautical mile before I hit second stage flaps. I like to do that while the autopilot's still on because it manages the change a lot easier than I do. Frankly, so there you go. So there's the nautical mile, so we'll reach that, which is fine. We're at 108, so we're going to drop down a little bit more. We want to be a little bit lower than that. We want to be around about 90, but you can see the ILS is bringing us in perfectly fine. It's sorting it out. We can see where the touchdown is, so we're right about here. We passed our minimum decision altitude, so we're going to land. So I'm going to drop the speed, take control of the plane at this point. We're still on glide slope, which is okay, so I'm going to feather it just a little bit. And we're going to line up on the runway. And that's us. It wants me to stop there. Okay, I'll chuck it into turbo prop into reverse, just so that we do. And then switch it back again, and we're down. A little bit of brakes, and then we'll get to the whole point, and that's that. So there you go. That is an ILS approach. Like I say, there's sometimes quite a few things to do in the old Honeywell. I'm going to set the sim rate all the way down so I don't have to deal with that. It can be a little bit complicated, but as I've said to you, and it's happened to me before, and I was confused why. VNav. You've got to be really careful with the VNav. It doesn't seem to function 100% accurately. So I think what it's doing is it's taking the endpoint as the calculating distance. So it's not calculating the nav path correctly. So I would say to you, if you're doing any kind of approach, RNAV or ILS or LOC, where it says that it has a VNav and it says that it has a VPath, I really take that with a big grain of salt, because it doesn't get you there. It didn't get me there. It was going to have me probably around about 5,000, 5,500. And if you miss over the top of the ILS beacon, you will just sail right over the runway and you will just miss it completely. If you come down like I did, early, sooner, you will pick up the glide slope. In fact, that is the best way to pick up the glide slope, is come in a little bit sooner, set your 2500 just a little bit before when you have to actually hit that transition, and then when you hit that transition at 2500, the ILS will take over and it will take you in. to a land. So there you go. That is the bug-riddled system that is the Honeywell Apex Prime. It's a shame because I do like this plane. I have said before, it is very forgiving. It is a delight to fly. It is a delight to take off and land. But this navigational system, honestly, shocking. It would be so much better if they replaced this with something else, or if this system, I think, was a little bit more like real life. The issue is this mouse controller down here. This is how it functions in real life, and we don't have that option on console to use a mouse controller. So I don't know. I feel like it possibly needs an awful lot of work to get it to work. Luckily enough, my understanding is that Pilatus is the only plane with this in it. But there you go. If you can watch the VNav and the VPath, you're probably all right. Everything else is relatively straightforward. I hope you have found this helpful. If you have found it helpful, hit that like. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification so you know when the next is coming out, and there will be more. The next one will probably be the last one for the Honeywell Apex Prime, which will be VOR style approaches, which if you've watched any of my other videos won't be a huge surprise to you, but by all means you can jump in and watch that, and then I will be moving on to something else, probably the Garmin G5000. If there's anything else you want me to have a look at, or anything that is a burning question that you have, or if you have any tips, tricks of your own, especially setting the baro units would be great. Again, I'd love to hear from you. Please drop a comment below the video, and I will see you all again for another one real soon, shall I? Ta-ta for now.